Today we are looking at the Canon C70 firmware update. Today we're going to be looking specifically about the eye autofocus and the new autofocus improvements that have been coming with the C70 and answer. Has Canon finally delivered on autofocus for this camera, and does it match up now with the mirrorless cameras? Hello, what's going on everybody? James Jackson here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that intro video. All of those footages you saw at the beginning was shot on the Canon C70, and I'm going to go more into the details later, but this is with the new autofocus update that came in with this most recent firmware update with the C70, which is, I think it's like 1.0.5.1.0. I think that's it. I could be wrong. I'll correct myself if I am not. Even though for a lot of things it doesn't seem as significant in some areas as the RAW update that came earlier this year, this is still a massive upgrade with a new picture profile, which we're kind of testing that right now. We're getting new audio channels, which now I can see all 4 channels right there on the screen, which I can see right now, which is amazing. But probably the biggest update that came with this firmware was new autofocus improvements. Specifically, we finally got eye autofocus in the Canon C70. In fact, I'm shooting on the Canon C70 right now, and I can see that this camera is tracking my eye directly. So y'all can see here, I zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, and I want to just say this. I'll not sugarcoat it. I won't hide it. In terms of autofocus, this update has been nothing but stellar. First of all, let's just quickly run through some of the improvements. One, as I mentioned, is there's now eye autofocus in the camera, but more importantly, there is now autofocus and eye autofocus in the slow and fast modes up to 120 frames per second. So now you can shoot 4K 120 and still have eye AF enabled. And that is one of the most killer things. But I was really interested to see how interested and vastly improved this AF was, or if it was improved at all. And I decided to really push the extreme in testing this out. One, because as some of y'all that remember when I gave my initial impressions of the C70, and people of my fellow YouTube channels who've spoken about it, the autofocus prior to this firmware update was less than stellar, especially for subjects that were of darker complexion. It struggled a lot more with dark skin and, you know, more melanated skin. So that was one of the first things I really wanted to try out, and luckily During this time, my sister-in-law was actually in town, and she happily volunteered, thank you, Kendra, for helping me out for this. And this allowed me to sort of test it, and I really wanted to push it to the really, really extremes. This is the first of a test, but this was like the extreme test. So the setting was I wanted to have someone of dark complexion backlit during close to, if not at sunset. And that was pretty much what my setting was. We went up to Nakamixon State Park in PA, and we just did some quick shots. I shot in RAW. I shot RAW regular frame rates, 60 frame rates, as well as the slow and fast mode options as well, to test the autofocus and every single thing. And when I say I really pushed it, I really pushed it. So not only was I using that, I was testing this on the Canon focal reducer. So number one, you now have an additional glass that is now affecting the depth from the sensor. And number two, I'm also using the Sigma 18-35, which overall, if it was just a normal thing, it probably would be a lot better, but it's got less of a field of view to keep track, and as well as this, the Sigma 18-35, while a very beautiful lens, isn't always known for having the fastest AF compared to more modern lenses. So I really was pushing like the capabilities of it, and I have to say I'm thoroughly impressed what I saw. I would say about 90% of the shots that I won. There was some cases where like the sun completely came out, and basically it was more of a lens thing where the lens flared up, so the contrast was completely gone. And being backlit, I mean, even some of the best Sony cameras would struggle in this scenario. In fact, a lot of them would struggle in general, given the fact that I was using an adapter and using EF. Most Sony cameras do great if you're using their native lenses, whereas this, I was doing everything but that. Now, I will be doing another test where I'll be shooting with a native lens, specifically the 28-70 f2 lens. So that's going to be coming up in a future video, so definitely check it out. But outside of that, outside of those few cases, the autofocus actually hung on and really stuck. And what I was impressed with, it was constantly still finding the eye, especially someone of darker complexion, which was one of the big things that held me back from still using the C70 for a lot of tracking shots, and especially using autofocus for certain areas. But now, with this new firmware update, I'm now more willing to really test, to really use this in a lot more situations comfortably. And now I can really take advantage of it. And this is extremely exciting to be able to have this capability. And now to trust it to where you can even use it with, I basically would say right now, it's usable if you tend to shoot a lot of people that are not of complete total fair skin, or people that may be somewhat underexposed. It's actually, the IAF is really good. Having that also in 120 frames per second is really where you see the vast improvement. It stays there, and you'll see, and you saw in that final shot, all that was in 120 frames per second. And when I moved and it found the eye, it stuck to it and it didn't move. And having something in those situations where it actually works makes this a much more interesting camera and a more complete camera. At this point, you know, there's very few things I could say about this camera that can really continue to hold this back. And to me, this has been one of the best investments I have made in the past couple of years. It has paid itself off tenfold, and it's only gotten more valuable and gotten better over time. These are my thoughts on the Canon C70 AF initially. What do you guys thought about it? Have you guys tested it out with the C70 yourselves? Let me know. Leave your comments below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, everyone.